Hello, I'm Dwaine Hartman, and this is Inner Balance TV. We have another show with Anrita coming up, and we had a delightful time making it. A few laughs, we got to sing together. It's going to be an interesting show for you. And so this will be coming up shortly. I'd like to mention that Inner Balance TV is sponsored by InnerBalanceHypnotherapy.com. And Inner Balance Hypnotherapy is a different style of working with the person, the mind, you. And you get to experience some high-level vibrations that you didn't know you had. A lot of people are really excited about the changes they experience through personal sessions, group, or through the training itself. So come by, check it out, and help support this type of work in your world of things. Well, hello, Anrita. How are you?
I'm good, Dwaine.
It's been a long time.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Glad to have you on the show. So you've been,
Sorry,
very busy.
This is such a way to start, you know. Yeah. We've just been having this nice conversation, and now we're just jumping into each other's words a little bit. It's so wonderful to be on your show once more. I'm always delighted to connect with you and to co-create with you, Dwaine. Thank you. Well, the past, the past few months have definitely been an accelerated emotional roller coaster ride, and definitely a lot of busyness on the work front.
Yes.
So I think it's just, as we're experiencing so many of those light frequencies coming through, we're going so deep into the shadow aspects. Mm-hmm. And that's also coming up. And I think the nice thing is that we're processing from a slightly different perspective now, in the knowing that we're looking through our master eyes. Mm-hmm. So we can go into a greater level of acceptance of the shadow aspects that need to come up, the parts of us that need to express themselves, perhaps not so comfortably, mm-hmm. In judgment of ourselves or in judgment of others, and giving that a voice. And, just kind of allowing that anger to come out, or allowing that grief. And grief has been a big one. Mm-hmm. I've seen that for many light workers, kind of just going so deep into the sadness, into perceived hopelessness, into, just kind of trying to get a sense of why we are here, really, what is going on. And really, it's so much about also that planetary consciousness is shifting, but we're still picking up, we're becoming more sensitive, and we're picking up a lot of those, lower frequency vibrations as well that are being transmuted. That's really why we call ourselves planetary light workers. So
the thing with this is that from the eyes of Source, we can look at this, and it can be a more gentler process than if you were from that other from the programmed consciousness, or you really?
Yeah. Well, what's happening is that we're starting to have those moments, a lot more moments in alignment with Cosmic Heart of Mother, Father, God. So those perceptual moments of cosmic conscious awareness, take us to viewing almost through our master eyes, where we have a greater understanding of our pre-birth agreements, our soul contracts, our karmic contracts. And then we still have to go into the human experience, into the transmutation, into the embrace, the release, the love, the acceptance. And I think this is really, sort of what's still creating for all of us this perceived sense of duality, where we're shifting beyond that into unity consciousness. Mm-hmm. And it's a very difficult process, because many of us are still going through so many challenges personally and obviously collectively, that we see so much going on around the planet. For myself, as many people know my story, that my children were abducted a couple of years ago by my ex-husband. Yeah. And it's just been such a slow process. When it first occurred, I just experienced so much love from the company of heaven, the understanding of this pre-birth agreement, just to keep me going. But of course, I also moved into grief, and there were moments of fear, and into the pain body, and into just moments of anger too, and moments of blame. And then that process for me was coming out of the blame, you know, coming into forgiveness and holding that level of forgiveness. But that sadness and that grief is still there. And you can process it, but sometimes then you just need to go into those moments of actually just going deep into the shadow, where you're experiencing, you know, and it's an uncomfortable place to be, but you're doing it where you have an observation of experiencing those emotions rather than reacting. Yeah. And I think that's just the perceived difference, is that we're seeing ourselves there and we're needing to release it. And the only way we release those old cellular memories, those core false beliefs and judgments, is really by temporarily re-experiencing them, to release it. And it can be a very difficult process, because that's where people get lost. You know, they get lost in that. When you're in that, there's moments of disillusionment, there's moments of hopelessness. And I went through, it was, I think, in the month of May, we were working very much with the ray of transcendence, a beautiful diamond ray of purity. And that ray was actually activated also within and around Sedona. It was creating this beautiful flame of purity that was activating through the hearts of all humanity. And from a ray perspective, actually, that comes through from the 18th ray of multi-universal service. So it was a deep purging, you know, deep cleansing, a deep clearing, giving us all that opportunity to really just, you know, transmute the deepest, darkest karmic contracts within us that created the human miscreations, the false beliefs and judgments. But for about 3 weeks, I was lost in it. And it's
But you have a very good, connection to home, say. You have this connection. So even though you're going in this, you're holding this other connection while you do it. And this is the thing that is probably really important for people to understand, is to establish a good higher level connection, then go in and do your work. Because if you don't have that connection, it's like the higher self, right? The higher self sits there, and it won't lower its vibration ever to come get you. Because if it did, you would be really hooped. You know? Yeah.
Well, you know, we would be living these multidimensional realities, which we are already, you know, through many of the parallel timelines that are merging into this now. But also so many of those timelines are so vivid. They're so much more real than this timeline. And it is to be integrated and grounded into this now too, as being in human form, choosing to step into human form. But that is an essential part of this connection that we have into the divine, is that connection that we have with our higher self of the light and our beloved I am presence, which is the highest aspect of our soul consciousness or soul light within the cosmic heart of Mother, Father, God. And although we all have it, sometimes the lower mind, the negative ego, amplifies, and we lose that connection. We either lose it temporarily, just simply in, you know, kind of reacting, you know, playing out, judging, blaming, whatever it may be. And if we can just observe what we're working with, then we can have a better way to simply be in love and forgiveness. But those feelings are very real. I find with anger in particular, you know, there's anger can either be done with that. You can get two types of anger. You get the anger, you know, and I think this is probably with all the emotional ranges that we move through, is that where you can actually control the anger. You know, you can bring through, for example, a beautiful diamond, golden and white flame of divine love, and then take it into the anger and give the anger a voice that needs to express itself in those shadow aspects that might need to say, you know, I hate you, or you this, or you that, and not be ashamed to give it a voice, because that's part of the process of releasing, accepting, transmuting, loving, and embracing the sub-personality aspects of ourselves. And then there is those moments of uncontrollable anger, where you just, you know, your whole body just moves into that anger, where you actually just feel you can't control it. And that's then the most important part, is simply to just acknowledge yourself as love. Just know that that connection is there. And at those times, it's so then important to have set up particular psychoenergetic techniques or routines that you can bring in, from simply breathing connecting to your beloved I am presence, perhaps just grounding to, just allowing yourself to feel that, but at the same time, just know too that you are divinely supported and guided in that, rather than using yourself completely into that emotion.
These states of being that we are connected to source, full on, there's a feeling inside of us, and to know where that feeling lives within us, that feeling of connectedness, and where that feeling lives in the body, and being able to just put the awareness there and breathe expands it.
That's right.
Because awareness always expands, whatever it is it focuses on. And so if people are, because if people go into the shadow and can't get out, to remember, write that down somewhere, so that when you go, oh, I'm deep in it, here's my little book, I can take a look. Yeah, simply go into where you felt it last time and just breathe, and you'll start to expand it, and you'll come out of it.
That's right. That's right.
Because I've seen a lot of people that get so lost in there for so long.
Yeah.
Well,
I think even many light workers, maybe, we awaken, but we still stuck with many of our addictive behavioral patterns because we're so sensitive. We're in a world where, you look around you and you can see so many of the human miscreations still at play, power and control issues, and many of your own perceived challenges that take you into survival, lack of love, or poverty consciousness, or, simply being in relationships where you're not seen or heard or appreciated. And those sensitivities then, for some, they give up. They just feel that connection, but then they get so deep too into just hopelessness and despair that, and it is all just a moment in time, and then they're shifting. And I think, we're kind of becoming stronger and stronger together as more and more, light workers are awakening, as more areas are connected into the unity grid of divine love in the increased light frequencies within the New Earth templates. We're finding that these moments are shorter and shorter.
They are.
Where we get ourselves lost, where we kind of feel that we need to, kind of move into that space. But we've now been able to do it a lot more through the ability to control those aspects of ourselves that simply need to be loved, by just loving them and accepting them.
And that's so the key, isn't it? Is no matter what's coming up, just love it, right?
And trust and surrender. I find that, for me in my own personal journey, that it's been so much about just trusting and surrendering, trusting and surrendering to the divine, trusting and surrendering to the pre-birth karmic agreement that has, created the particular situation that I find myself in, and of course not in parallel, but everyone has their own story of their own challenges. And when we can know that, justice will prevail and there will always be the highest outcome and a win-win situation, and just hold to that, let that be our knowing, then we are able to, really just be much stronger and to move forward in a greater level of forgiveness and love. And those lessons and those feelings then, allow us to simply love others completely unconditionally, no matter where they are, because we've been there, which is part of this path.
And that vibration ends up becoming the steadfast within you. So
absolutely,
it all comes back around to what is it that you hold within, like where we can go on these, like we were saying, that it's faster all the time that we come back to this, but what's the end result that we're being shown is that vibration in you that you hold steadfast is manifesting everything. That it's and that's your Merkabah. That's how you maneuver in this matrix, right?
Very much so. Well, we're building what we call this electronic body of light, the I am Adam Kadmon body of light, which is the full merge and integration of our beloved I am presence, I am avatar body. At the same time, we're also creating the unified Merkabah field of divine love, which can only be done in love, which can only be done in unity consciousness. So many of us are now being able to activate the frequencies of light that hold the particular geometries of light and fractal geometries and numerologies and key codes that will assist in our own, light body Merkaba activation. And that vibration then amplifies, it just amplifies, and it connects into the unity grid, and we start to, come together as this one unified cosmic heart. And we're experiencing that so much more, which is great. I know there's still people that feel quite isolated or alienated, which is quite funny, being aliens, most of us.
Yeah.
But it is so much now we're finding those groups of coming together and finding levels of support and finding like-minded souls that we're connecting with. And if there is still that, still then we're working with, kind of just deeper integrations of our own perceived sense of being uncomfortable here, of not grounding and rooting. A large part of this has got to do possibly with also, reclaiming your power and, reclaiming your sacred space here and saying that I am here in service. I'm here for a purpose, and I've chosen to downstep my vibration, and I've chosen to be of service. And we start to then draw upon that power where we can, communicate and connect into all walks of life and all frequencies, and just come from that place of just observing and gentleness and looking through our master eyes. It doesn't really matter into, kind of like the frequency that we're having to connect with temporarily with just general people. We always in that space of light ourselves. But there is also self-fragmentation, so much of that work that we have to do, because the agreements that we choose prior to incarnating are the karmic agreement as well as the soul agreement. And the karmic agreements that are played out along the karmic timelines are the victim and persecutor consciousness, in particular the lesser than and better than consciousness. So we have to walk that, and we have to experience that. And once we come into the knowing of ourselves as love, as these sacred transfiguring flames of divine love, then it is where we experience holding ourselves steadfast in that light. And it makes it much easier as we start to transverse into the Christed timelines. Because it's all about, this polarity is simply unity consciousness. Within it, there is only love. Every emotion that we experience holds within it love. So we start to transmute the anger into love. We start to transmute the grief into love, the sadness, the pain, the shame. It doesn't matter what the emotion is. Those emotions are very real from the perspective of what we feel, but it's how we're able to shift it into love. And that's why the psychoenergetic work is also very important, I think, as you awaken into, being this beautiful master being of light.
Yeah.
And that was so much my journey, when I work in my early 20s, that I did a lot of inner child work and past life work and, inner masculine and feminine rebalancing and the clearing of the, the original divine age self blueprint and so on. And I feel that, sometimes we need to have a dip back into that. So I see with me, I love doing the activations and I love experiencing the light frequencies. They're just pretty amazing with all our beautiful beings of light. And then sometimes it really is just going back into and just loving the inner child, letting her see where her pain is or his pain is, and just allowing those aspects of ourselves to be given a voice. Or what are we still affected at this time through, parallel realities, the karmic timelines, the past lives that are affecting us from the karmic perspective most at this now. And then we can go through to the Christed timelines of our highest potential, of the knowing of ourselves as initiates of light, of the knowing of ourselves in self-mastery, and bring that into this timeline now. And for me, those realities are so much easier than being here, being on earth, and dealing with the challenges of being in form and dealing with the pain body. And yet we've chosen that because we know our ability to transform and experience ourselves as love.
In my experience, personally, being an empath, I was picking up all the emotion and trying to transmute it. And I had to learn ways to understand what was mine, and what was the world's was the world's, that it was going to take me out if I'd have continued that way. And that wasn't going to be helpful for me or anybody else. So I had to learn how to say, you know what, this isn't all mine. I mean, I remember spending quite a few years just crying, you know, because I was feeling all of it. And then when I understood that it wasn't all me here, what's going on, right? I was taking on everything, the pain of the world, that I could stop that and then shift into that vibration and find that vibration. Because, I don't know, what do you think about that?
I think that many people have that gift. You know, I have that too, that gift of clairsentience that you're talking about. You know, I think the biggest gifts that are developing for all of us is this clairsentience and telepathy. You know, many have too the gifts of healing, which is very common. I think we all have that gift too in many different ways. It's just expressed in different ways. Those are common gifts. So definitely we pick up, you know, from just even the people around us, the energy of others. You know, it's just the energy of places, the energy of people. And, you know, that's why also we become more discerning or selective where we choose to, you know, kind of, or the people we choose to hang out with or the places we choose to go to because of, you know, many of the mixed energies that affect us too in different ways.
And
but
it's okay
it is very important,
It's okay to value your own vibration, right? To your own vibration and have value. And say, okay,
of course it has value. Yeah. But more than that, it gives you a sense of where you are, you know, it's in terms of what you are still working with, what you are feeling, rather than, you know, the confusion of, you know, picking up everyone's thoughts and feelings and, as you're saying, like thinking they're your thoughts or your feelings, being unclear, even in relationships and partnerships, even when you are together a lot. It is important to take some time for yourself because otherwise, you know, you merge into the energy of one another. And that's great if you're one of those very blessed and fortunate people that have a beautiful relationship because that just amplifies into a greater level of love. But, you know, many light workers are still traveling the karmic path with, you know, relationships of victim and persecutor consciousness or even just relationships with family. Because family and friends, you know, so those relationships or even colleagues can be quite difficult because they're people that you spend a lot of time with and, you know, you're starting to pick up the energy. So for me, what I always like to do is before I go to bed every night is I just visualize a rose of any color of my choosing outside of my energy field. And I place within it the energy of the people that I've seen that day. And not even because they have a bad vibration or a negative, you know, energy. It's just to keep your own energy clear. You can run golden rain through your energy fields. You can bring in the violet flame of Saint Germain, the white light of the Christed One, Archangel Michael, shields of light. You know, there's so many different techniques that you can do. And I often say to people, you know, if you've got in your office and in your home space, you can also visualize a white sheet moving up through the property, clearing energetically like that. You can bring in platinum nets in the doorways. You know, so when you're walking through that, that's like also an additional clearing technique. There's so many different ways to run energy. You know, even when you're taking some time out in the evening and you want to just put your feet up for half an hour and whatever it is, listen to music or watch a show on TV, it doesn't really matter what it is. You can be running energy. You know, if I have, you know, when I'm doing in the evening, it's like time to just sit and relax. I'm already clearing my house and creating vortices of light. It's just, you know, it's just fun. Yeah.
And to feel that, to hallucinate the emotion of what that would feel like, and to feel that, you know, so when you're running energy and you sweep it through the house, you feel when it hits you when you go, you know, that feeling part really adds a lot to it.
It's amazing. And I think, you know, so many people are feeling, you know, not only their own energy and the activations of their hearts and, you know, kind of a lot of this on the ascension symptoms, the kundalini activations, whatever it might be, and that increased sensitivity. But although we have different gifts, you know, many with that gift of feeling will feel the energy of these beautiful light beings, and it's just amazing. You just sort of like almost feel like shivers or goosebumps moving through the body, or someone tapping you, touching you.
Yes, yes. Yes.
High-pitched sounds through the ears. I have that constantly, kind of like they just high-pitched frequency, and then sometimes it shifts frequency when I know it's downloading. So I'm like receiving downloads, and I go, okay. And for many years, I had Pleiadian implants, which I don't really need to work with now because I'm in a much greater level of remembrance. But when I was first waking up, I would sit all the time. It was on my left hand, and just sit and rub it, because it would just bring through so many of these memories, and I just had these downloads. So, not all implants, of course, are negative too. It's to know that we get star implants, but there's so many just different, incredible techniques that we can utilize because these beautiful beings of light, the Christed ETs and the archangels and, the mighty Elohim, and the Sisterhood of the Rose. I've been working with the Sisterhood of the Rose lately, and I'm just loving that. It's, coming into the divine feminine consciousness, which was really activated on the solstice in June, in particular for all of us. And Isis is a huge part of that group, and she brings through a beautiful silver gold, pink and purple healing flame of light, and Mother Mary with the pink flame, and activates it through the heart. There's just so many things that we can do. Sometimes you just go, so much. You should have worked with now. So I end up just bringing them all in because, we just have so many friends there in the realms of illumined truth. So.
And so supportive of this shift.
And I think they just really see us as so courageous. They just see us as so brave because it is, choosing to incarnate as volunteer souls onto the lower world. It isn't so easy.
No.
It really isn't. So they truly just in such love, and we can, as we tune in, and we can feel so supported and loved and nurtured. And know that we can create that within our relationships too, that we're all deserving and loving. And I feel what's also being brought up so much at the moment now in the month of July is this human consciousness that goes into the deepest shadow aspects of ourselves that feel unworthy and unloved and unappreciated. And it's really been cleared on such a huge level, that, we have moments of going into it and then coming out. But once those core patterns of feeling unworthy and feeling unloved and feeling undeserving are cleared, it's cleared through the planetary matrix. And that's when we truly then are just love. So we just, we're having to move through this full range of emotions and to allow ourselves to express all these emotions, to know ourselves as love. But we're finding more and more that it's just coming into a greater level of peace and harmony and balance if we allow it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take away, from what it is that we're still experiencing, but it gives us the strength and knowing that everything is just a temporary moment in time, and that too will shift.
I think it's good for people to know that you or I or anyone that is sharing and teaching, that if we were to focus on an anger and fight and this sort of thing, that we can lower our vibration too, it would be no different than anyone else. That it's the focus, that it's just shifting, recognizing, shifting, and focusing on that higher level love that continuously brings more information, more things. We all have it. We all have this ability to shift that, right? So
yeah, it's intention. It's intention.
So it's to catch yourself when you go in there and interrupt the pattern, because it is a normal pattern for humans to do this. We've all been doing it for so long. It's like ingrained in us to do this thing. But yet, if we stop and shift and go over to the higher feelings, that we're just interrupted that pattern of looping, and we come into a different loop. And just to, like I was saying, that you or I or anyone else, if we spent time doing the same thing, we'd end up very in a different vibration. But it's just repatterning.
That's right. It's exactly what it is. It's like catching it. Catching it is the conscious awareness.
Yeah.
So you find yourself either moving into judgment or wanting to say whatever it is reactively, possibly, to something that's going on around you or with a particular person. It's catching yourself. That's half the work, and then sort of almost like taking a deep breath at that moment and choosing then. It's a choice of, can I take this into diplomatic, way of communication or into a greater level of love, or, am I really going to just, play out my human miscreations and still my own perceived sense of injustice or whatever it may be. So
I think I know what you do. I think you giggle. I think you laugh about it.
Well, I'm probably pretty good at that.
Yes.
Give me a few moments to just sort of see where I want to go,
Yeah.
But I think it is important, you are just, as you're saying, repatterning or, kind of just moving into a new habit. We used to, as you say, second nature. And we brought up with that, from our parents and carers and people around us. They just, we have lived in a world of unconsciousness, although we have developed a level of conscious awareness. Often we just choose to incarnate into places of polarity where we aren't seen or heard, or our parents play out reactively, and, then you imagine that's just what you do. So you're brought up in like a fear-based reality, and if someone says something to you that you don't agree with, you can say terrible things back at them, or you can verbally abuse them, or whatever it might be, because it seems to be that's what humans do.
Yeah.
And so then it's to reprogram ourselves to know that actually we no longer need to abuse ourselves, and we no longer need to abuse others, and we no longer need to attract and bring into our reality those that don't see us. That's a choice. That's a choice to say, okay, well, I'm still in this abusive relationship, but, that's okay too. Or we can say, okay, well, I choose to no longer be abused, and, come into recognizing that person as a great teacher and what they have taught us and brought us, and then move back into what am I going to do about it? How am I going to shift that reality so I'm not giving my power to others by being angry or resentful, and just, I want to live lovingly. I want to live in joy. I want to live in bliss. So that's the first step of identity, which is still identifying with self. And then as we start to shift that, we start to have a greater sense of service to others, because we've experienced then, kind of just those karmic patterns to such a level where we have incredible compassion and sympathy and understanding for others and where they are. That we want to be of service. And then we just do that according to, kind of our ray influences and our soul contracts, and whether we choose to come through as the spiritual warriors, or whether we choose to come through under the ray of love, wisdom, into a greater level of the creative expressions of the poet or the author, the world teacher, the way shower, or whether we're going to do from the scientific, spiritual perspectives, whatever it might be as part of our soul purpose that lifts the consciousness of this earth. So we all have our own roles within that, kind of collective planetary consciousness of light. But it is so much coming together, those individual puzzle pieces coming together within the collective. And that's wonderful. That's wonderful to see. And just being kind to others, just to interrupt there. I think, sometimes we just to be kind and appreciative to people around you. When I was in India, the one thing that I noticed is that there was just such an appreciation of the people, and they were so kind to one another. They were always, wherever you went, people were lavishing you with gifts, and, they would hand out money to one another and to, kind of those on the streets. And there was just almost this is how it was. You would give what you could. You would share what you could. Even if you had very little, you would still be sharing that with others that had less. And I think that's just so much then of this compassion that we talk about, just being our open heart, just being kind and appreciative and loving, and seeing where we can assist on many different levels.
Yes. And like you, I came in doing that, and still do that, and I will continue doing that. And, you know, whether it's in agreement with other people or not, it's just something I came in of service, and I continue, right? You know.
Tell us a bit about your work, Dwaine. I know that you were mentioning that it is a little bit like Starseed mapping. If you want to share with
the thing is that I understood a long time ago there was a certain amount of hypnosis that we talked about tonight. A certain amount of hypnosis that's been going on with humanity. These patterns that are unchangeable, right? Not unchangeable, but can be changed. But these patterns that have been going over and over and over again with humanity. And I got very curious about hypnosis, but not from the point of view that I wanted to hypnotize somebody and make them do things. I got curious about hypnosis because I knew that we've been hypnotized. And I was questioning, why are people not in their potential? Why are they limited? Why are they, you know what I mean? If we're source energy, we are this source energy, why is it that we're so limited? So I went into studying this to understand how this hypnosis has worked, and I figured out that, as well as had lots of help from Arcturians and different beings that, you know, helped me along the way to understand a different part of the human psyche. So being able to bring people into that state of oneness with their own source energy, connect to that so that they have a strong connection, and then being able, like we talked about, being able to do the work, but not doing it from the point of view where they get lost in it and disappear for years and years in there, right? But there's some very interesting things that we can do simply by bringing our awareness into an area where we have already experienced a high spiritual state. We all have them in our lives. They happen to us to remind us. And then when we bring our awareness back into that place and start to expand it, well, vibration is what's creating reality. And so when you shift your vibration, you just shifted the process of what's coming towards you as experience. So then once you start rolling with that, you can roll with that as easily as you can roll with the negative, right? But this is what I'm working with people with, is changing that core vibration. And when they change that core vibration, come out of the hypnotic trance that they were in and free themselves to the source energy, they start creating. It starts showing up as experience.
Yeah. It's the power of the mind, isn't it, in some way? But you're taking it into the emotional, into the emotional body through the connection into, kind of the heart energy, which is very lovely. It's really interesting. I know that hypnosis is very much like, that auto-suggestion is very similar to the guided visualizations that we do. You just take people into a very deep space. But I've never been able to be hypnotized.
Have you had problems in your life?
No, I mean, it's just,
have you had problems in your life?
What do you mean by that?
Like limited? Have you felt limited in your life?
I don't think so. Okay. I mean, it's just, I just have never been able to, through hypnosis, and what's interesting to me, because it's so very similar to, the guided visualizations, that auto-suggestion is so much that we use in the imagery of transmission. You're just doing a very similar process. And that I can go very deep, but I think it's almost like that process of hypnosis. There's a block there for me because there is some subconscious thing that says I'm giving my power to others, or there's someone in my mind, or I don't know what they're saying. Is that possible for some people where they express?
That's why I changed the induction technique completely, because the induction techniques in the approach that I have created, called the Hartman approach, the induction techniques are done in an ancient style, where we simply just look at each other and drop into midbrain, instead of the whole forceful, or I'm going to take you into hypnosis. It's a joint effort. We're both going there. It becomes very, very calm, and it naturally starts to happen. It's not something that's foreign to us.
Yeah. Well, you're giving your conscious permission, aren't you? For that process to unfold. Yeah.
The top part, basically, the top part of our mind is filled with fear patterns. They're looping all the time. And as soon as we drop out of there and go into midbrain, we're firing the pituitary and the pineal gland, and we drop in. And if you notice, the eye of Horus is a imprint of the inside of the brain. And they were sharing with us where to go to drop into this midbrain place. So I have brought some ancient things back, and because they're more helpful. It's not helpful for people to feel that I'm controlling them, because that's the last thing I want. I want them to control them, right? I want them.
No, absolutely, of course, for them.
It's not about
responsibility. Yeah, exactly. But when you were mentioning ancient Egypt now, I just remember seeing one of your beautiful videos. There were a couple of really nice videos that you had put up on some of the gods and goddesses, the deities of ancient Egypt, taking people into a greater level of remembrance. And that's certainly also one of my great fields of remembrance. But one of the videos that I watched then more recently was where you were doing this beautiful chanting and toning. Is that what for you? Because I also speak in light languages. So for you, is that then your sense of speaking in light language that you're bringing through?
The low tones are the earth, and then the high tones, of course, are the bridge. And so bridging the two together is what I'm doing. So the higher realms, when I go high, which kind of hasn't, I haven't heard too much of that, where you're doing low tones and you go right up into the high tones, and then having them simultaneous, right? So there's two tones at the same time.
Yeah. Very nice.
My intent is I'm bringing in the higher frequencies here to Earth, right? By doing that toning. Yeah.
Lovely. So should we do a little bit of sounding?
Sure. Sounds good.
Okay. So do you want me to go first, and then you, and then we can just sort of see how that synchronizes?
Sure. Okay. Sure. Go ahead.
Amahimo amahingo ahio. Himo ahi ahioko mahio. Hiko mahi ahioko mahio. Imo kamakimo akimashingatang iko mayakata. Imo angai amashingai tawakamatia Fun.
I had to get my earplugs out because I couldn't.
Oh, okay, to hear. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, because I was doing that with you just a little bit at the end.
Good.
Well, I think that sounds very much like the Hathor, you know, kind of like those vocal sounds that you're making that are coming through. It's very, you know, sort of Hathor. I get like a deep sense of the Hathor and sort of into the crystalline matrix through that as well. You know, just all those sounds that are being made. It's just really, I feel so much that the sound matrix amplifies with these beautiful gifts that come through vocally.
The speaking you were doing is very familiar to me. It's very familiar in the sense that do you ever, like while you're doing that with a person, do you ever start making adjustments in their auric field with your hands and stuff like that?
I just do it all the time. Yeah, you know, I kind of just, my hands are always moving. I just move them out of the video frame a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, absolutely. You know, because it's just, and sometimes it changes, you know, it's like never really quite the same when, you know, so I'm bringing through energetically when I'm doing that frequency, I'm bringing through in sonic vibrations or just through the speaking of the light language. You know, when I'm speaking it, it goes into different light language frequencies depending on, you know, who I'm with. So I often use that individually and also collectively into different groups. But it's like everything else; it's just a greater level of activation. Yeah.
One of my students, she was very much a left-brained student, left-brained person. All of a sudden, one day, she started speaking, and it sounds almost identical to what you're doing.
Okay. Yeah,
and
they're very similar. Yeah.
Totally shifted her to the other side because, I mean, you know, and other side of her brain. I mean, she was over in her right. I mean, and this would spontaneously, you'd see her get red, and all of a sudden this would spontaneously start coming out, right? The light language,
yeah.
And
yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's so many people that are doing the light language. So, yeah, I mean, there's everything what it's doing is activating the DNA. So it's all of those that we're bringing together as our collective gifts, you know, resonating frequency and vibration to take us into, you know, just this collective consciousness of light. Yeah. And what's lovely to see is that we're all accessing so much more the creative gifts that we have, and they're expanding. Because we're moving more multidimensionally, which means, you know, that vertical alignment that we're experiencing takes us into the higher dimensional frequencies where we experience of our multidimensional selves. And those multidimensional selves could be on Arcturus or Antares or the Pleiades or Sirius, Lyra, you know, all these different stars and planets. And as we start to never mind just the parallel realities of our highest potential, and it's all starting to merge into this now. And when that happens, you know, what we do is the matrix download, isn't it? So that you wake up the next day and you're just this incredible artist or...
and it can happen that fast, yes.
Exactly. You know, it's just the access of those gifts, whatever they might be, that are just amplifying for all of us. So that's quite exciting. You know, it's yeah, it really is.
It is, yes. To discover, all of a sudden you have an idea and you start to do it, and in no time you're doing it.
Yeah.
And you're expressing your creativity. You're expressing something that's deep within you.
Your heart's passion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your heart's passion, your heart's joy. So much then what is happening here is that we're stepping deeper into our heart's streaming and our heart's passion. And so for many people that's quite confusing too, because we're seeing, you know, still that sense of discontentment in having to go to, you know, kind of a regular job maybe just to get a paycheck at the end of the month, of not really enjoying what you're doing, and, you know, being concerned, quite rightly so for the most part, if you give up your day job, and you know how you're going to actually just, survive and pay your rent on your own, if you haven't really you're not quite sure yet, what you truly want to do with your heart streaming, but you really just don't want to be working for someone else or whatever it might be. So much of that then comes back into the heart of just finding contentment in this now and appreciation and everything, and just allowing that to guide you from an intuitive aspect. Because I think sometimes we then just get caught in the mind and in the, kind of, is this like how life is? And it becomes more survival than living in love. And even if we do our passion as our hobby to start with, then as it gathers momentum in its own right, there will come that time and place where we will be able to support ourselves from that work. And that's then the process of trust and surrender. So much is about, again, just truly coming into what our heart's dreaming is and following our heart's joy by trusting and surrendering to that in our creations of light. And it's not an outward process. It's very much an inward process. It's a state of consciousness that creates that sense within ourselves of contentment.
So is the worry whether you're going to survive or not in your heart's passion. And it's because that's duality. And as soon as you drop the duality in that and you just go, I'm going to do it. When this happened to me, I was learning to play the didgeridoo. There was a fellow by the name of Shine Edgar that was out teaching us how to play the didgeridoo. And as I'm playing the didge, he looks over at me and he says, you have to play your own tune in life. And I'm thinking he's talking about the didgeridoo. And so I shift and I play a different tune. And then he looks at me again and he says, play your own tune in life. And okay, so when the weekend was over and I was standing at the patio and it was time for me to go to night shift, I dropped to my knees and I shook. And I couldn't do it anymore. And so I phoned him and said, I'm done. And that's when I started. Yes, it wasn't easy because, of course, there was a lot of things I had to go through internally. But it wasn't externally. It was internally, seeing it, being able to see the avenue open up, right? Going inside and meeting new people in the higher realms, and sharing that this is what I have to offer and I'm here to help. And then these people phoning and saying, I don't know why, but I chose to phone you, but I phoned you. And I go, I know why. Yeah, come on in.
Yeah. Yeah, amazing. And it is so much about that, just from the other aspect then of the, having to work to make money. I remember when I started many years ago, of course, I also just took a leap of faith and moved into that trust and surrender. But the first, say, 5 years, it was financially quite tight.
Yes.
And I would sit there with the beings of light from on high and, say in a couple of days my rent was due and say, okay, so by the end of the, in 2 days now we need $300 that, we're going to pay the rent now. And literally like the next day I'd get an order. There was never a month that went by that I actually never had enough. And for me it was such a revelation in complete trust. Yes. Because I realized that I didn't ever have to worry. I think so much of the time we look at these unrealized fears or worries. So the universe will support us in every way it can, but we have to actually just choose to be those co-creators in following our heart's joy and our heart's dreaming. And when we can do that, we will always be provided for.
Yes, and your experience and my experience brought us tighter into our relationship with all that is, because we realize that there is something that, you know what I'm saying? So you jumped in, I jumped in. We jumped into this and went, you know what? I believe. And yes, right. You go down and you for a little bit and you go, no, I really believe, right? But always the rent was paid. Always this was taken care of, that was taken care of, always.
That's right. That's right. And for me, it was also living humbly. You know, I mean, at that stage I was living in the UK, and quite literally, I chopped wood, and, you know, I lived with this little organic garden, and, you know, it was just, I remember the Buddhist saying of the path to enlightenment, you know, chop wood and carry water.
Yes.
And I used to sit there with a big smile on my face, but it was that, I think, that place of coming from just deep humility and appreciation of what I had, rather than what I didn't have, that which was very important. You know, it really just taught me to be humble in life, to, you know, and to be
very important. Yes.
Yeah.
I agree. It's very important, because there's something that you break free from by hypnosis of the world and society and where it's headed. You break free from that, and you step back and you look and you go, what do I really need? What do I really need? What's serving my soul? And a lot of it goes away.
Yeah, and, you know, you find you actually just really don't need very many material possessions. You know, I moved countries with a couple of suitcases. You know, it was just started again. You know, and it wasn't important. You know, it was the contentment of where I was and that moment. And it was very interesting for me, because it also showed me how little we need on a material level. That when we're enriched in soul, that you know, everything is taken care of, whatever our needs might be. Not to say I don't like the energy of money, and I think it's very useful and wonderful, and there's so many wonderful things you can do. Wonderful things you can do with it.
Yes, and I have, you know, you can help a lot of people too. Like it's all, you know, I love that part.
Exactly. I think that's just really what I'd like even more, but I'm very content where I am right now. But we'll get there. I think really that there is, you know, the shift in consciousness where we will get back into that golden age where it won't be based on a monetary system and financial institutes and insurance companies and pharmaceuticals and
all that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Well, it's been so lovely, Dwaine. Yeah. It's been wonderful to connect with you again. And I'm heading now to Europe. I'm going to be in Portugal, actually, for about 3 weeks. And then I'm heading to Glastonbury. I'm going to be doing a workshop there. And I'm looking quite forward to that. There's quite a few of our soul family and friends coming to join. So, yeah.
Well, I know that you're very busy, because I think it took a year to get this interview, right?
Okay.
This time frame, you know?
Yeah.
So,
well, it's good to be busy.
Yes.
It is indeed. So again, just wonderful love and blessings, and I look forward to connecting again when we do. And so from my heart and to yours, and to the cosmic heart of all creation, blessings in love. Namaste, Dwaine.
Blessings and love to you too. Thank you.
Thank you. See you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.